Hello and welcome back to episode 26 of the Shark Source podcast. I'm joined again by Shaedon, and we have a great episode coming up for you. It's going to be a little shorter than our previous ones, but that's okay. There's not too much news to cover. Our main story of the day is Tony DeAngelo. Tony DeAngelo was waived by the New York Rangers, and he recently cleared waivers. So we're going to be talking about that, what his future is, because he has no future in New York. We'll get to that in just a second. So we'll see where he goes, where we think he'll go. And then we'll sort of transition to the New York Islanders. They have had a very disappointing start, despite Semyon Varlamov playing very well. So we'll discuss the Islanders, how they're second last in the division, and what seems to be the problem for them. After that, we'll be talking about some COVID issues. A lot of teams have been suspended, had games postponed, moved dates and stuff. So we're going to talk about that. And do we think the NHL is going to be able to complete the season? And we'll get more if we have time after that. So let's get right into Tony DeAngelo, though. Tony DeAngelo was waived by the New York Rangers after having a somewhat slow start to the season. He was recently signed, I believe, by them to an extension last offseason. So we'll get more into that in just a second. But Shaedon, what are your initial thoughts? Were you surprised that DeAngelo cleared waivers?
No, I'm not surprised he cleared waivers. Well, first of all, he's a pretty hefty cap hit for the player he is. So, a team would have to make a move to bring him in. But also, he's a locker room cancer. And, I don't think anyone would want that on their team. I have my own thoughts when we're talking about potential destinations, but I think he probably just stays in New York just because of all the news we've heard over the past couple months about him, his personality-wise, and once again, that cap is huge. So, in the COVID non-cap world, I just wasn't surprised that he went unclaimed.
I actually was a little surprised, and here's why. For those who aren't as familiar with DeAngelo, you probably should be. Last season, in 68 games, he put up 53 points as a defenseman, and he is known to be an offensive first defenseman. A lot of people would even say he's bad at defense, but he's very good offensively. Now, this season, he only has 1 point in 6 games, and is a -6. Now, we don't really like plus-minus as an individual statistic, but -6 in 6 games is definitely not good. So I was still surprised to see him clear waivers, though, even though he had a slow start to the season. Here's why. Because, 53 points in 68 games is very good for a defenseman, and there are plenty of teams who need offense. In fact, we'll talk about one of those teams later on. As for his cap hit, DeAngelo's cap hit is not as bad as it's not too bad. He has a $3.725 million cap hit this year and a $4.8 million cap hit this season after, which is a solid amount, but compared to what other defensemen are being paid, like Carlson, Burns, Vlasic, Hedman, it's not outrageous. He's only 25 years old, and he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of his deal. So I did think that teams would pick him up. But, of course, as Shaedon alluded to, the locker room issues do seem to be the problem. Now, DeAngelo has been hated on by many people in the media for years, often due to his political views and his Twitter, which he was very active on previously. But this wave did not have anything to do with his Twitter, his political views, anything like that. It was apparently because of an altercation with Alexander Georgiev, the Rangers goaltender, and that was why he was waived. But as Shaedon said he thinks that he's going to return to the Rangers, but the GM of the New York Rangers said that Tony DeAngelo will not play for the Rangers again. So I'm not really sure where he goes from here, because if he has no future with the Rangers, the only options he has is either go play overseas or some team will make a move with the Rangers. And because no team wanted him, it would have to be a trade where one team is getting rid of someone else that they don't want. So I'm not really sure who will go after him, but there's plenty of teams who need to clear cap or get someone off their team. So I think maybe we'll see that happen. But anyway, one of those players who was rumored is Sam Bennett from the Calgary Flames. So he had also been rumored to be traded from the Flames for a long time. Longtime listeners of the podcast know, and people who have followed my Instagram, Shark Source, know that we really don't like Sam Bennett. He had a very dirty hit on Radim Shemek a couple seasons ago, so we definitely don't like Sam Bennett. But the Flames seem to not like him too much anymore either, because now he might get traded to the Rangers for Tony DeAngelo. That's one possibility. So, Shaedon, what do you think about Sam Bennett getting traded? And do you think a Bennett for DeAngelo swap is possible?
Well, I mean, I feel like Bennett just needs a fresh start because, I mean, he's a fourth overall pick in 2014.
Yeah.
He's been with the Flames for almost 7 years now. And, I mean, he shows up in the playoffs, but, I mean, during the actual season, he just doesn't do anything. And Bennett actually came out and requested a trade, so it's obvious that these two parties are heading for a divorce. I mean, today, I think he's scratched for tonight's game, so maybe a trade happens tonight. But I mean, as much as I hate Sam Bennett because I don't like him at all, I just don't know if the Flames should trade him for Tony DeAngelo. I mean, that locker room has had I know that locker room because, I mean, Flames play in Alberta, so I hear about the Flames a lot here. But that locker room has had a lot of issues as well, Calgary. And, I mean, I honestly don't think it's smart for them to bring in a guy like DeAngelo when they already have guys like Rasmus Anderson on the right side, Noah Hannafin, Chris Tanev, I mean, and just shake up that locker room because that can have a negative consequence on that team. And, I mean, the Flames could hold Bennett to a high value where the Rangers would have to add more. But, I mean, I just don't know. I think any trade the Flames make with Sam Bennett, you got to be careful of it. First of all, Bennett could thrive in any environment, or he can just flat out bust. So, I mean, if the Flames want to take their time making a trade with Sam, I mean, it would make sense. They would want to try to get the best possible package back for him. But to train for a guy like DeAngelo, I just don't think it's smart on their end. I've even seen some fans on Twitter on Flames Twitter saying if they trade for Tony DeAngelo, they'd stop watching the Flames, which just goes to show you how bad. I wouldn't say how bad the guy, but just how people view DeAngelo in the league. It wouldn't be a smart PR move per se either. But if the Flames trade Bennett, hopefully for them, it's a good return. But I would not trade him for Tony DeAngelo. There's just too many red flags for that situation.
I completely disagree here. I think if you're the Flames and you have an opportunity to bring in DeAngelo for just Sam Bennett, and if the Rangers retain part of Bennett's salary, which is what the rumor says that they might do, you jump on it. Look, the truth is, Sam Bennett is a bust. There's no other way to say it. He is a bust. His career high is 27 points. This guy, for a fourth overall pick, he's a bust. And the Flames need to accept that and try and move on as quickly as possible. And that's what they're trying to do. Now, look, DeAngelo's got his issues in the locker room, clearly, and not everyone likes him. But if you're the Flames, you're desperate. Right now, the Flames are second last in their division. Now, they have the fewest games played. So if you go on points percentage, they're doing a little better. But also, goals for. They need offense. They're second last in their division in goals for, with only 2 more goals than Ottawa, and they're 23rd in the league in goals for. So bringing in an offensive defenseman like DeAngelo, I think, is just what they need. And as for the fans who say they're not going to watch the game anymore, I would just say grow up, because there's plenty of teams that have players that are, you disagree with on politics, or Ottawa has Austin Watson, and he's guilty of domestic abuse. Patrick Kane beat up that cab driver. There's plenty of players in the league who people might not like and might not agree with. But at the end of the day, if it makes the team better, I think you gotta make that move. And again, Tony DeAngelo is not someone who I think teams should be jumping over and desperate to get. They shouldn't have to give up a lot to get him. But Sam Bennett is really a useless player. I mean, just to be frank, he's useless. 27 points, career high. That's just unacceptable for a fourth overall pick. For the highest pick in Calgary Flames history, it's a joke. So I think if you're the Flames, you got to bring him in. But I don't know if the Rangers would be willing to do that. But, maybe they'd want a better return. But since they couldn't give him away for free, maybe they would take Bennett. I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyway, unless you have any other thoughts on that, we'll move on to our next topic.
Yeah, let's just move on, I guess.
All right, so our next topic is another team who I think could benefit from Tony DeAngelo or any offensive player, and that's the New York Islanders. I was very high on the Islanders after they made it to the conference finals last year in the bubble, and I thought that they would do very well this season. But they have not done well at all. They are currently last in the league in goals for with only 19 goals in 9 games. They have a winning percentage of .444. They do only have 9 games played, but they're still still last rather in their division. Second last in the division. Sorry about that. But yeah, so if you're an Islanders fan, you got to be worried right now. But Shaedon, why do you think the Islanders are struggling so much out of the gate?
Goal scoring.
Yeah.
I think that's just the main reason why they're not giving up too many goals. Actually, I'm pretty sure they've still been one of the best teams for goals against. Cindy Varlamov was off to a great start to the season. Sorokin's off to a sluggish start, but he's a rookie, so I wouldn't put that much hate on him. But goals, I think that's it. They don't have a top-notch goal scorer.
So what do you think they can do? Because the Islanders are a team that do have cap issues. As much as they deserve credit for doing so well with a team of a lot of mediocre players and a few good players, they do give out a lot of bad contracts. Very similarly to Vancouver. The Matt Martin contract, while it's not, it's only $1.5 million, but it's a 4-year deal to a guy who's 31 and an enforcer. Leo Komarov is getting paid $3 million per year. This team is definitely not great at cap management. So how can they improve their offense? Who do you think they can bring in? Besides a guy like DeAngelo, because we already mentioned him. Is there any other players you think they might want to take a look at? Maybe Sam Bennett?
I think Bennett could be a decent fit for that team. I just think that whenever the deadline is, I think it's April 12th, you just bring in any pending UFAs that are top-notch goal scorers. The best free agents available so far are guys like Ovechkin, Landeskog, Taylor Hall, and even Hawkins, but realistically, their teams are in a playoff spot or in a playoff hunt, so they're not going to trade them. Especially guys like Ovechkin, who's going to stay in Washington, of course. But I wish I had an answer for that question, but I really don't, because if they didn't give these albatross contracts to guys like Cal Clutterbuck and Leo Komarov, like you said, they could have went out and signed a guy like Tyler Toffoli, who's lighting up in Montreal right now. They could have maybe got a Mike Hoffman for cheap. Maybe they trade Komarov $3.5 million, and they give it to Mike Hoffman and sign that exact deal for that exact same amount of money in St. Louis. And I guess they could play rookies. Oliver Wahlstrom has potential. Kiefer Bellows. But, under Barry Trotz's system, you're not going to get much offense. And, I don't want to say he's a problem, because Barry Trotz is the best coach in the NHL with the system he runs. But if players aren't scoring in your system, and you sign these guys big money, score. Like Anders Lee gets paid $7 million, and they're not. That's a huge problem that they have to address, and they might have to do with rookies.
Yeah, it's definitely tough times for the Islanders, and in this league right now, the division play, they're in a tough division, the Mass Mutual East Division, and even though it's early because it's a shortened season, they need to turn it around quickly if they want to make the playoffs. All right, so we'll move on. Our next topic, COVID-19 outbreak in the NHL. Now, look, we knew this would happen. We knew that teams would test positive. We knew that games would get postponed. And we knew that this season is not guaranteed to be completed. But definitely now you have to be concerned. The NHL just announced new COVID-19 preventative measures. They're hoping to reduce the spread because a lot of teams have tested positive. So the Minnesota Wild just tonight, I believe, had some games postponed. I know Dallas Stars at the beginning of the season had games postponed. Vegas had some games postponed. Sabres head coach Ralph Kruger just tested positive, so they're going to have games postponed. So I think the Devils also had some games that were postponed. So it's very tough right now for the league, and they're hoping that this will pass. Now, we saw similar outbreaks at the beginning of the MLB season, and they were able to complete it. But hockey does not have as much money and resources as MLB. So, Shaedon, do you think the season will be able to be completed? And if not, what happens?
I think for sure it can be completed. I mean, the NHL can't stop the season again. They're going to lose even more money. The NFL was just fine. The NBA, I mean, their stars are getting COVID, and they're still running along well. And hockey's back. I mean, it took a really long time for them to come up with a plan and restart it. And I just don't think it's a smart choice for the NHL to stop the season again. They're already in like $3 billion in debt from last year just because the playoffs didn't happen, the playoffs in April didn't happen, and the 10 games for each team were wiped out. That's a lot of lost revenue, and they do it again. That could really hamper the league. And yeah, I just don't think it makes sense to cancel. If that makes sense, just on the financial aspect of it, it's just to delay everything again. I mean, they want next season starting in October because Seattle's coming in, and just delay everything because of COVID. I just don't think you want to make people wait for who knows how long. And so far, the games that they postponed like a couple weeks ago are starting back up this week. So I don't think it's the end of the world. At the very most, it's going to be a 10-day postponement. And it's a bad situation, but I just don't think it's smart to suspend the season.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and more so because we are getting closer with vaccines. I know that they're not going to have like 80% of the population vaccinated, and at that point we can return to normal probably until the summer. So we probably can't expect full capacity crowds during the regular season. Hopefully for the playoffs we will, but not for the regular season. But yeah, if the NHL can just get through a few more months, just grind through, eventually their players will be able to be vaccinated, and then we will be able to continue the season. And of course, these delays are tough for the players. They're going to have to play very condensed schedules, but the NHL has to get through this. Every other league, like you said, has done it. So I think that the NHL sort of has to get through it, because what other option do they have? Okay, so just in the end, I know we don't have too much more time. Shaedon has to go pretty soon, but one of the topics we mentioned is Doug Wilson. So the Sharks, while it is early in the season, they are looking about what we expected, a pretty average team, but paying their players as if they're cup contenders. And right now they're last in their division, but they've only played 8 games. So Shaedon brought this question up to me, and I thought it was an interesting question, so I'd like you guys to hear it. If the Sharks don't make the playoffs, should Doug Wilson be fired? So Shaedon, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, those contracts in Logan Couture, Vlasic, Burns, Carlson, Martin Jones, that's killing the team. They can barely make big changes because those contracts are going to hamper them. Couture's is not as bad because, I mean, he's been struggling with injuries. I still think he's a very, very good first-line center. But, I mean, Vlasic's aging, Burns' aging, Carlson's aging, and they're getting worse every year. Carlson has like, 3 assists?
Yeah, no, it's a joke. That's the
And
worst
even though
contract
I
in the
don't like
league.
plus minus, he's like a -8.
Yeah.
Like, they're getting worse. And Martin Jones, the goaltending's still not fixed. Martin Jones looks worse. Phoenix not really doing anything. And soon you gotta re-sign some of your good players. Like Timo Meyer's honestly on a very good deal, but when his contract's up in 3 years or 2 years, he's gonna command more money, and you might not have to cash this because Vlasic will still be signed for another 4 years. Kane will still be signed for another 4 years. All the blame should go to him. And my mindset goes like this: first, you fire the coach, you bring in a new coach. If that doesn't change anything, it falls right into the GM. They already fired the board. They brought back Bob Booger. This hasn't changed. It falls into Doug Wilson. He's been the GM of that team for its entire history in the NHL.
Well,
and they were really good. They were, but it's just not the same team that we saw in the conference finals from 2019. Their veterans have regressed, and we just have no cap space anymore, and the goaltending's not good.
yeah. Just a little correction. I don't believe he's been the GM for the entire career because he did play for the Sharks. So for 2 years, but yeah, he's been the GM forever, and yeah, I mean it's a shame because he really can make some good contracts. The Timo Meier contract and the Tomas Hertl contract, very good signings. And he's drafted well. I mean, getting those two players I just mentioned. I really like the Ryan Merkley pickup because even though he's not great defensively, I think at that late in the draft and now, in the first round, and now he's a top prospect. So he has shown flashes of being a good GM, but those contracts are going to sink the team because what they do is they don't allow us to rebuild. The Sharks can't rebuild because with those contracts and we can't get rid of those players, we're never going to be terrible. I mean, we were terrible last year, but we probably won't be bad enough to get like a first overall pick, but we'll never be good enough to win the cup. And I think we're headed for Minnesota Wild territory where we're just an average team and we're just spinning our wheels and no hope of getting out from under those contracts. So I do think that Doug Wilson, if we don't make the playoffs, we should definitely consider firing him. The only reason I don't say outright we should fire him is because I think we should look at the GMs who are available because I think we need to get it right. So I don't think we should fire him and then just bring in some guy who wouldn't be much better. So I would take a look at the GMs who are available and then decide if we should fire him or not based on that. Because it also is kind of hard to judge the team in a COVID-shortened season and only division play. So I guess we'll see how that goes. But anyway, that'll do. We got to wrap up quickly this time. So maybe I'll list this as episode 25.5 because I don't know if we could call this a full episode. But Sharks do return to play tomorrow night against the Ducks, and then we will be returning home finally. And they are approved to play games at SAP Center. So that's exciting for the team. Hopefully.
There is one bit of news I just found out right now.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Eric Francis is a writer for the Calgary Sportsnet. And he said there is no interest on the Flames' part in taking Tony DeAngelo. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then there we go. I guess there goes the first segment of the show. But I think that's a mistake. I think that they could really use some offense. But we'll see where he goes. Maybe he will have to go to the KHL. We'll see. All right, well, anyway, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out some of our previous episodes. We did a very good one last week on the Patrick Laine trade. And check out Shaedon in the description. Check out the Instagram in the description. And we'll see you next time.